Second, fine. Will do.
So, yeah, now I give you microphone.
All right. Well, hi everybody. Dina asked me to do a talk, and so this is going to probably be a little bit chaotic in the end. Everybody, can you please mute yourself? Because I do occasionally hear my own echo.
Uh,
Dina, can you mute everybody?
um, yes, I'm muting people.
All right.
Katya Legler, привет. She here? Yeah, she's here. Okay, everybody muted. They're here.
Okay, great. So this is going to be a little talk on kind of all the things I've been thinking about. It really is very broad. And it's going to be a little bit chaotic. And in the spirit, because we're going to be talking about dreaming and relationship and a lot of things like that. The name of the topic just kind of, is something I'm going to touch on, but I'll go a little bit broader. So I want everybody to maybe just take a second and just imagine yourself sitting in a circle around a fireplace. I'm hoping to make this a kind of an interesting kind of conversation. And I like that image of like a whole bunch of people, under blankets or quilts, sitting around the fireplace, just talking about curious things and interesting things. That's the atmosphere I'm going for. So, I'm not going to be showing slides. I'm not going to be running through topics. I'm just going to kind of talk. I have a loose plan, and that's what we're going to do. So the primary goal here is to kind of put into context a lot of things that are taking place right now, and try to understand them and put them in context. And we're talking about many different things. We anybody who hasn't been sleeping at the wheel would probably know that we have a ton of wars going on. Everybody is connected to the Russia-Ukraine war, I'm sure. We've all experienced the COVID times. We're looking, some of us at least are looking at and following the developments in technology. And suddenly, as of just a few months ago, you can kind of talk to artificial intelligence, and some people are falling in love with AI, and some people are kind of freaking out because they think that AI will kill us all. And it's just the beginning. You can see that it's just the beginning, because the speed with which it's all happening is completely breathtaking. And my goal today is to maybe talk a little bit about sort of why I think all of that is happening, what it means, how to place it sort of into a bigger picture, if for no other reason than to just kind of feel good, because all of this could be like incredibly anxiety provoking. So, so that's what I'm going to be doing. The way I'm going to be doing it is I'm going to start with two sources, which have really influenced my thinking around understanding this context. And the two sources are, one of them is this really curious guy who I first came in touch with and started listening to in relation to the Ukraine and Russia political commentary. It's Stanislav Bilkovsky, who is, to me, I think, is an absolute genius and magician. And the other source is a psychiatrist and neuropsychologist, Ian McGilchrist, who wrote in 2009 a book called Mastering His Emissary that I absolutely love, and it has influenced me tremendously. And they are talking, believe it or not, about the same thing. And I'm going to start with one and then talk about the other, and then do a little bit of maybe kind of commentary on how I apply their views and what I see kind of as a bit of a futurist with imagination, or if you will, just a crazy guy who kind of tries to imagine what things will look like. So let's start with Bilkovsky. He has this concept that I don't think he's particularly well known. It's not a popular concept yet. I hope it will become one. And it's the idea that the Age of Enlightenment epocha Просвещения, is coming to an end, and we are at a transitional period between the Age of Enlightenment and what he calls the Age of Return, epocha Возвращения. What does it all kind of mean? How do you explain it? Well, the Age of Enlightenment was predicated on the idea that humans, this is how he explains it, that humans do not no longer need the hypothesis of God. They no longer need to believe in God. This happened sort of the mature parts of the Age of Enlightenment started after the French Revolution, which was the late, I think, 18th century, middle 18th century. And what it basically did is it kind of evicted religion from everyday life, creating, setting the stage for, the advances in science, in technology, in society. We got a lot of stuff. We got the scientific revolution, the industrial revolution. That's about the time when we started prioritizing human life. And we came up with, concepts of liberty uh, and democracy, um, and the modern types of government. And all of that was fine and good, and it gave us kind of the next 300 years of progress, more or less, in which we've really developed. We've built a whole bunch of things. We've really, actually, even despite the fact that people are still kind of killing each other, the 20th century was probably the least amount of killing, or at least the second half of 20th century was the least amount of killing than throughout the whole history of humanity. So it was overall a good thing, or at least, if you will, it was a thing that enabled us to live in the way we do, which we currently consider good. It has also created a lot of problems. And the problems that it has created came from the very reason that was put into the foundation of it, not having the idea of God, not having the idea of religion, not prioritizing spirituality, but prioritizing rationality, actually kind of ends up meaning that we really it became much more difficult for us to relate to each other and the world and the earth. We're destroying the environment. We are we generally speaking, we're losing meaning of life. And I will talk about this because the second source I'm going to talk about really uh, explains kind of why that is. But rationality is a thing from which you can't extract the meaning of life at all. And so we got consumerism and climate change and in general heightened suicide rates and um, reduced happiness, because as much as we are powerful, we also don't freaking know what to use this power for. Um, and so, as is with all transitional periods between large historical periods, we are seeing a lot of turmoil. It's basically your usual, plague, hunger, war, and death that, of course, look around. And we've had our plague. It was COVID. It was kind of a little bit theatrical, but nevertheless, it scared us kind of shitless at some point. And we see the war, we see hunger because prices of food are increasing, and we are forced to, people around the world are forced to eat less and consume less, and there are less resources, right? So we see all of those things. And what's coming next, right? At the age of return, what is it? Well, Bilkovsky talks about it as the return and renormalization of the idea of God, and reintegration of that idea back into everyday life, and actually the elimination of conflict between rationality and God. And that is very important because we're not talking about replacing one with the other. We're actually talking about rebalancing. And I will talk about that as rebalancing also when I talk about my second source. But suffice it to say that in brief, what we expect will be brought on in this next historical period, which we don't know how long it will be. We don't know when these things will come, but we sort of know what to expect. We know that we will expect more spirituality and more normalization of spirituality. It's very important because spirituality does exist, and religion, I think, real experiential religion, not, old style organized religion, which I don't buy into, but real, experience of divine forces and sacredness actually exists in the world today, but it's not normalized, which means that everybody who experiences those things believe, maybe correctly, maybe partially incorrectly, that they are outside of the mainstream. And so when we talk about normalization, when we talk about the return of spirituality and the return of God, we're not so much talking about it returning as if it wasn't there. We're talking about its reintegration and about its renormalization. And then what other things are we kind of expecting? Well, uh, we expect, for example, a lot less black and white and a lot more grayscale. And this will become kind of, again, interesting when I talk about my second source, but suffice it to say, without really explaining it, that we might maybe replacing, the binary black and white true false with a much more grayscale, it's both true and false. It's, somewhere in between kind of concepts. We will see a lot more fluidity and flexibility in how we understand the world, not from the perspective, is it this or is it that, but from the perspective, well, maybe it's both to some extent. That fluidity can already be observed in many places. Me and Dina have studied process work, which foreshadowed a lot of those ideas, right? Um, and interestingly, like, let's tie this back to the exact social problem we're experiencing. If you've been watching the past 15 years, we've seen a complete breakdown of the concepts of fact. We live in the post-truth society where you can't freaking find out and agree on what is true. Some people believe this is true, some people believe that is true, and each side calls each other crazy. But actually, the misinformation and the information warfare that is happening on social media and in the world is causing a complete breakdown of the very notion of truth. And it's very interesting to me because a breakdown to me is always a rebirth. In order to birth something next, you have to first break down, and burn down the forest that exists. And the forest that exists right now is truth and binary and completely disjointed. And that has to be broken down. And that is happening with some degree of violence right now, but it's happening nonetheless, that we have to break that down in order to create a more fluid understanding of truth and false, right? What else is happening in the age of return? Well, the hierarchies, the hierarchical modality of governance and organization structuring is giving space to more flat and networked organizational structures. And that again, there will be a little bit more explanation there. But yes, we see that the hierarchical systems right now are breaking down completely. The stuff that's happening in Eastern Europe is just the most loud manifestation of that. But even in the US and even in sort of quote unquote civilized world and everywhere in the world, we see dysfunction enter the hierarchical structures. And again, what this is doing is breaking down the fabric of what we conventionally used to have and understand as a functional organizational system, which is the hierarchy. There's somebody on top and somebody below them, and that is now burning down. And what do we see coming up? Well, we see things like Bitcoin, which, don't talk to me about Bitcoin. I hate Bitcoin for a, whole host of reasons. But Bitcoin and in general, these sort of networking technologies that are very early and very strange. They're kind of like this Cambrian explosion of mutants out there, are arising as networked structures to replace the hierarchical structures. Oh, how interesting, right? We will see the breakdown of borders and a whole change in how we understand the the borders of countries and laws, right? Bilkovsky talks about countries no longer needing territory in order to govern and be units of organization. And in fact, climate change and COVID both are challenging the idea that countries can govern themselves independently of each other. And then also we have migration and we have technology that is completely borderless, right? So we are starting to see the breakdown in separation between different territories and different ways of being. And what are we also going to see? Well, we're going to see a redefinition of what it means to be human. We're going to have to redefine ourselves. And in this framework, what that means is we're going to see ourselves less as rational beings and more as spiritual and dreaming beings. That is my prediction. Bilkovsky does not talk about that. He's a very religious uh, kind of individual, so he always talks about the relationship of person and God. Me, who has a very different concept of God, I always talk about the relationship of spirituality um, and Ola, can you please mute yourself? Thank you. Relationship of spirituality and rationality, and guess what? Here comes artificial intelligence, and it is suddenly this thing that is either already as intelligent as a human being or will become as intelligent as a human being, basically any minute now. And it's not surprising to me at all that people are freaking out. People are freaking out, saying, "Oh, the AI will kill us all because we cannot control it because it's too intelligent." Um, but I think my explanation for why they're freaking out is actually completely psychoanalytical. I'm going to say, dudes, you've always defined yourself as intelligent, and you've seen yourself as intelligent beings, and it's not a coincidence that the term Homo sapiens was invented during the Age of Enlightenment, because we define ourselves as intelligent being. That's what we've been doing as rational, intelligent, knowing beings, and that's what we've been doing for the past 250 years or so. And then suddenly there's something that's kind of challenging our concept of intelligence, because guess what? AI is intelligent, but completely dead. And suddenly we're like, okay, but we're kind of alive, and we're kind of there, and we have feelings, and we have religious experiences and all these things, and we have experience in general. We observe the world, but the AI does not. But the AI, in fact, is intelligent, and even perhaps more intelligent than us anytime now. And so who are we then? And because of this challenge, a lot of people are really fighting stop AI, right? And of course, it's a really bad idea for a variety of reasons. Maybe I'll talk about that a little bit later, maybe not. Uh, but but this whole knee-jerk reaction of stop AI is those people's response to the challenge to their human identity as presented by this new development in this period where we are being heavily pushed by history or by God, as you will, to redefine ourselves, because spirituality is starting to return and rebalance. It's really required for us to survive, for that rebalancing to happen. Um, So that's in brief kind of the first set of ideas, the transition between the Age of Enlightenment and Age of Return that really influences me. I really like this framing. Oh, and by the way, AI that is basically eliminating. This is one last thing I wanted to mention in this really regard is the economy of money and what that is going to be like in the Age of Return. And to me, again, Bilkovsky doesn't talk about it, or maybe does a little bit, but we will really relax the how can I put it, the physicality of money, the limit. Money as a limited resource will be replaced by something else. I can't quite say that it's going to be unlimited, but what I can say is we absolutely must introduce UBI, Universal Basic Income, because AI is going to eat up about a third to half of the economy, if successful, which I think it will be, because all of those middle class professions are starting to maybe not quite being replaced, but becoming so efficient that this sector of economy will basically collapse. And what will we do? You know, we can't allow people to be homeless. We have to have universal basic income, which is one of the ideas. And I'm familiar with multiple, but I don't want to go too deep into that, where the whole idea of the limited money as limited resource is changing, and it will become a much more fluid, flexible, maybe unlimited resource. We will see. But that is what's happening in finance. And again, not really a surprise that the nature of the market has been really changing very dramatically in the past, 10 to 20 years. I've caught some of that period when I was on Wall Street. I was literally sitting on the trading desk with traders looking at the charts and saying, we have never seen the market like that. We don't know what's going on. And that's only going to happen more and more and more. Part of this transition, this again is kind of my addition to this, is the degree of complexity reached in all these systems, financial, government, social systems, is so tremendously high that there's simply no possibility of a human being to grasp it, understand it sufficiently to to either control it or at least to have a meaningful interaction with it. So that's the first framing. It's very interesting. It's very compelling to me. I don't
step in.
imply that it. Yes.
Yeah, saying that yes, I would say in this first bunch of ideas, you gave a lot of ideas. And some of them, I personally a little
Correct.
bit right now confused because some ideas I agree, some ideas I don't agree, some I don't understand. And it's very intense and very packed. So maybe before we step further, we open microphone and give people, maybe they can ask, you guys can ask questions or give your feedback, so we kind of have some conversation.
Let's do that for about let's do that for about 10 minutes. I mean, I'm happy to stop here if this is too much, but my goal here is to provoke thought, not necessarily answer every question.
No, I would like to hear more, and maybe you have some
interact,
kind of
have a chat.
solutions or ideas more. But for me, I would say, so let's open microphone. Guys, I muted all of you, but you can unmute yourself and ask questions by voice, or you can write them, or not necessary questions, maybe something which you understood or don't understood, or you want to direct us in certain direction, you want to point in certain direction. Bulkyn mentioned, but maybe it's more interesting to you. Hello, anybody? Nope. People.
How soon do you think it's going to happen when we would need the universal income?
I cannot talk about timelines honestly. I think whatever I say about timelines is probably going to be false. I know we need it already, actually, like we need it, but how soon it's possible to do that is absolutely beyond me. I have no idea. I think if we don't do it, we're going to have a big problem, and AI will make that problem even bigger. I think for the economy to really reposition itself around AI as a new degree of efficiency or replacement for human professions like, lawyer, clerk, actuary, computer programmer, all of these things are
Wait,
becoming first
do you
really a
really
lot more
think
efficient, and
AI
then
will replace lawyers? Because, there are some mechanical, some informational part, but there are some creative part in the lawyer profession, or finding like communication
so
part,
Dina, your
etc.,
internet is a
etc.
little bit slow, but I think it's happening already, and let me explain. Um, in the past, a lawyer had to spend time reading a document and a time writing a document. If you wanted to really write or understand a good contract, you pay a lawyer, 20, 30 hours of their time, right? To read it, to write it, to understand it, right? Right now, whenever lawyers start adopting this technology, they will be able to do it in, 2, 3 hours, right? I'm not saying they're going to be completely replaced, right? That's futuristic. It's kind of a question mark for me. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But how many lawyers do you need if a lawyer who sits in front of a computer with a 50-page contract can understand that 50-page contract in half an hour, being assisted by AI that maybe does something as simple as highlight the important parts of it, right? You need a lot less lawyers. So I'm not saying you can, make your computer write your contracts for you. I'm not saying that. Maybe that will happen. I don't know. What I do know is that the efficiency of the legal profession will increase. You know, it's increasing for programmers. Programmers, you know, at certain levels can write code about 2 to 5 times faster now than they could 6 months ago. Lawyers, probably a very similar dynamic. So replace, I don't know, but a lot of lawyers getting fired and not finding jobs, quite possible.
Mhm. Well, it's probably we are coming to this point quite fast, because what I experienced this spring was very interesting scene in Azores, in your place, Bulkyn. You wasn't there, but we had a bunch of people, like team of people, I think 5, 6 people, and some of older generation, and we were arguing and discussing what will happen with AI. And there were 2 people between 21 and 26, and they were just using AI already. My nephew,
Exactly.
yeah, my nephew was writing his sales proposal, all with AI. He showed me the whole logic, and your employee Bulkyn was using it for writing code.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, that's it.
So UBI is necessary right now for a variety of reasons, but it will become untenable. The economy will become untenable without it. I think probably in 1 to 2 years, very, very soon.
How
We're going to
soon?
start seeing
One
probably
year?
1 to 2 years, one,
One to
one
two
to two,
years.
right? Because otherwise you're going to have unemployment at such level that you might as well have UBI.
I also have a question. You mentioned, by what means do you think the shift into reintroducing divine or God into life would happen for mainstream? Let's say, how realistic is this? How
Well, so that is actually sending me to the second part of what I was talking about. But to answer your question, kind of right now, I think it comes from loss of meaning, right? Meaning cannot be gotten by rational uh, thinking. Like, why do I live? Why do I work on Wall Street? Why am I on Facebook? Why, right? And loss of meaning is causing a whole lot of people to seek meaning. And when people seek meaning, people go to people like Dina and people like, you know, a lot of people, and they go to mushrooms, and they go to ayahuasca, and they go to the Amazon, and you know, and I've met a lot of those people who are actively searching. And, you know, for whatever reason, right, Dina will confirm this, the young generation, the 20 to 30 people, there's so many people among them who have simply no question about where the meaning comes from. They already know God. They already know spirituality. I don't know how it happens, but they're getting born, and they somehow come into the way of being that is very spiritually informed.
Yeah,
Right?
but they do miss this link in between mainstream way of
It's
thinking.
not normalized by the way by
Yeah,
which
it's not
it will
normalized. That's a problem
the
for
way by
them.
which it will normalize, right? I'll give you a small illustration. Gosha just now spoke with several doctors about a psychedelic program. I see Yulik there, who is raising his hand. I was just gonna. Gosha just told me that he spoke with you, Yulik. You can just unmute yourself and talk if you want.
Yeah, I just muted Yulik.
And
he's unmuted.
And basically, you know, Yulik, you tell me what the doctors say about why they want to go into psychedelic therapy and those kinds of things.
It was a question not about going themselves, but everybody see they stuck in routine, they burn out, they have no excitement at work anymore, and you're stuck with medical system which very rigid and doesn't provide care for so many new problems and new patients. So psychedelics could be one possible answer. It's not resolve everything, but at least it will give you so much more potential, time, opportunities, and excitement, which we already lost so much now for people who've been in medicine for a long time. Yeah, so it would be a really cool piece, but nobody knows how it actually will work. So it's a lot of excitement, but a lot of unknown questions. Yeah.
I think personally there's a kind of a network effect and an avalanche effect where when there's a certain critical mass of a certain way of thinking, it becomes normalized. To me, and this is I wasn't going to talk about this at all, but to me normalization is simply the process of discovering that you're not alone in believing a certain way, right? So normalization is like, look, if we see people who believe something similar to what we believe everywhere, we're like, oh, like this is now the normal. And that's how normalization happens everywhere. That's the normal process of normalization, no pun intended.
It happens very interesting way because normalizing like psychedelic or spiritual experience, they also try to connect it to take it on over the bridge to this logical way of explaining, which is not always, for me, which makes it shallow and takes meaning off it. I gave this example. I'm talking about it, and I talked last lecture. So when one of the doctors who had psychedelic experience at my ceremony, she called, and she had a real spiritual experience, like what people call spiritual experience: open the heart chakra, open head chakra, understanding many things, how it happened in the universe, understanding her connection to the whole life, etc. She called me 2 days after and said, oh, I understand why. You just gave me more than 2 grams of psilocybin. And I read an article that like less than 2 grams, no spiritual experience. More than 2 grams, there is spiritual experience. That's how it's simple. I was really like pissed off, honestly. And we had a fight last Monday about this, because people with this intellectual, logical way of thinking come into the territory of spirituality and trying to make their laws and their greed put on this territory, which is have absolutely
which is not
different
the same as
landscape.
normalizing, which is not the same at all.
Okay,
I
what do you
agree
mean
with
by
you.
normalizing?
Well, so it's tricky because what you're describing is co-opting, right? That person, there's a word that kind of means you come into the other territory and you take it, and you, instead of changing with it, you change it. So when you come to a mushroom trip and you have a religious experience and then say, oh, it's just 2 grams of psilocybin, what you've done is you've co-opted the experience. Your rational mind has not let go, and so it's not a normalized process, right? However, I think it's a kind of a fight between these two, and I want to postpone this particular discussion till the second part,
Mhm.
because there's a lot of good ideas there that kind of really talk about this. But I also see Gala raising her
Polina
hand,
and Yulik, I don't know if Yulik finished his ideas.
Yulik, do you want to?
No, I still have question, Sash.
Question.
My concern that AI will not just help utilize and simplify this process, but it's also divide people to different directions. So smarter people will definitely use it for their benefits and would move upstairs. But people who just rely on simple and binary decision will find it's also very helpful, and it's moved them actually downhill. Because you don't need to do anything. You just don't need to think or make decisions or make any judgmental calls.
Yeah.
You don't think so? It's not. Mhm.
I don't know how this will play out. This is such a black swan to me
Uh-huh.
that I have no idea. It may do the complete opposite. It may actually converge people to about the same level of intelligence, because the information and the knowledge and the ideas become even more available than they are now, right? Or in fact, look, first of all, what do you mean by up and down, right? If intelligence is no longer the key identifying property of a human being, well, when somebody becomes, quote unquote, less intelligent, is that actually a problem? Right? So in this framework, we don't know, because that person may absolutely, like, if you don't have to work, if you have UBI, and if intelligence is not your primary, way to rank people anymore, then what does it even matter? You go and you do your thing as a human being, whatever that is, even if it means watching TV all day and doing nothing else. And why is that a problem? So I'm going to challenge you, because in your question is an embedded assumption that it's all about intelligence and it's all about the level which you achieve in life, but that's changing.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm
You
not
see what
saying
I'm
just
saying?
intelligence. It's all things together coming with being able to make decisions, being reasonable and honest and spiritual person, because your spirituality is also dependent on choices you can make. And in situations when you don't need to make any choices, and you everything you need just automatically given to you, including your cultural, intellectual, professional needs.
Honestly, let me tell you the thing that worries me the most,
Uh-huh.
which, like what you're saying, I have no idea what will happen. The thing that worries me the most along those same lines is the concept of artificial intelligence babysitters, like
Okay.
actual robotic babysitters, right?
Yeah.
Because if we're not careful, we're going to raise a whole generation of sociopaths, and that might be a big problem, right? So I'm not in any way advocating for AI. I'm saying it's unstoppable, and I'm saying it will be here. I'm not saying I love it. I'm not saying it's safe, and I'm not saying it's great, right? So all of these things are very meaningful questions, to which I can only say, I don't know, let's wait and see.
Okay.
Galina.
Galina.
You're
Galina,
on mute,
Galina.
if you're
Galina
talking,
doesn't hear us.
not.
Okay.
I unmute myself. I unmute myself. No, I'm here.
Okay.
I have a boring question. Can you please go into money again? I didn't quite understand when you said that money will be enough for everybody, probably, or something. And does it matter?
Well,
because
so
money is not. And I just wish I had money to go to all classes, to all spiritual classes, to all
yeah.
yoga classes. I have at least that. I'm not talking about psychedelics,
Well, look, so I don't know what form it will take. Again, this is just the beginning of a very long process, right? What signs am I seeing? Well, I see the idea of UBI start to pick off. What does
What is
UBI
UBI?
mean? Universal Basic Income. So
Oh,
the concept of UBI just means, let's say if you're living, in Connecticut, right? You get $1,500 a month, no matter what you do. It's not a welfare or an unemployment. You get it. Everybody gets it. Everybody
really?
gets a basic. That's the idea of UBI, right?
Okay,
You,
I
you
wish it would exist, but it's not. And I don't know how, I mean, I don't know. I will never have it. I'm not poor, but I'm at the age
Galina,
of,
if we
yeah,
don't do this,
yeah.
the economy will collapse,
Well,
right?
I like
It
it, but I don't think it will come to.
well, fine. I think it will. You think it won't? Like, let's
Okay,
shake hands
We'll see.
and hug each other, right?
I'd
Um,
like it. Yeah.
but if you ask me what the trends are, right? I'm only talking about the trends here. The
Okay.
trends are that the fundamental myth of money is changing. It used to be that money equals the amount of hours you spend on a certain activity.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
In early 2000s,
Yeah.
there happened the dot-com boom, and there was a whole lot of entrepreneurs. I, as somebody who is an independent, I know that the amount of money I get is completely unrelated to how many hours I spend on something.
Yeah.
For me, that myth of money is already gone. Like I will, if I can avoid it, and I think I can, I will never trade time for money, right? Now,
Yeah.
can anybody do this? Probably yes. It's just not everybody knows this. So that's another way in which the concept of money is changing. Then the third way in which the concept of money is changing is Burning Man. Burning Man is a small pocket of people who says, I will not interact with money because I will just do things out of the goodness of my heart. And I'm not saying any of this is sustainable. I'm not saying any of this will happen. What I'm saying is that the mythology of money is changing and new things are becoming available as ideas. And which of them is surviving and which of them will mark the next period of history, I do not know. Okay.
It would be wonderful. But I think none of us immigrants came through this. I'll do it out of goodness of my heart because we had to survive, right? We had to survive.
Yes.
We are just part of other humanity.
Maybe.
Okay,
But
I think
okay.
our time is limited, and you had
Thank you.
another piece of this information.
Yes.
So
Dina,
maybe we give you.
So how much time do I have?
Oh,
Let me
I
ask
would
you.
say, okay, we have like 13 minutes to the hour, but I would continue. It's an important topic, and you gave a very concentrated lecture, so I will prolong like hour and 15 minutes. So we have half an hour, but we need to stop again to talk again to open.
So how about we go till 9:30 and I will give us 10-15 minutes for questions.
I'm going to talk half an hour again.
No, I'm going to talk for 20 minutes and then we have 10 to 15 minutes for
do we have people? Do we have capacity for that? I need some response.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. Yeah.
All right, awesome. Okay, second source is I'm gonna try to be fast, but the faster I go, the more information I will produce.
I don't
So
know.
I'm
Yeah, and
sorry.
also speak to microphone. You're a little bit lower than voice, a little bit on a yeah.
Oh, really? Oh, that's a
Yeah.
big problem. Okay, so the microphone is right here, so I can't really
Ah,
talk
okay.
much
Yeah.
louder.
Oh,
So
it's okay.
okay, so Ian McGilchrist, Mastering His Emissary, is a 600 page book that talks about the function and the balance between left and right brain hemispheres. It's a book that starts from the functions of the left and right brain hemispheres, and then it basically, and I'm going to be very brief, I highly recommend you read it, but the difference is what you expect, right? The right brain is intuition, relationship, and dreaming. The left brain is rationality, planning, and physicality, right? So, and what he does that's very interesting and unique to his discourse is he talks about the periods of human history in which the left and the right brain hemispheres were dominant. And in an interesting way, it maps out onto the previous concept that I've described exactly right. So the period of enlightenment was the dominant period for the left brain hemisphere in which we really developed the left brain functions, the communication, the rationality, the planning, the empiricism, etc. And we kind of lost track of the right brain functions, which is dreaming and relationship. And this transition that we're talking about is kind of the rebalancing, the return, again, the age of return, but in this case, the return of the right brain hemisphere. So let me talk about this in a little more detail. First of all, what is dreaming, right? We, in Dina's community, we use the word dreaming a lot. We talk about dreaming technologies, dreaming modalities, process work dreaming, nighttime dreaming, psychedelic dreaming. What is that, right? Well, the dreaming, why is the dreaming positioned in the same place in the brain, in the same general area of the brain as relationship? That is my question. And the answer to this is actually quite obvious if you think about it. In relationship with another person, or maybe with a tree, or maybe with the earth, right? What you have to do is you have to make assumptions about some unknowable aspects of the other. Like if I am, in love or married to somebody, I can know what is in their mind. If I'm friends with somebody, if I'm a coworker with somebody, I, to some extent, have to form a picture. It's called theory of mind. Yulik knows a lot about that, right? And theory of mind is by definition a dreaming technology, a dreaming function, because we actually can't know what's in the mind of another person. And in order for us to think that we know, because we have to know in order to be in relationship, we have to dream what is in the mind of the other. And so to me, the origin of dreaming is theory of mind and the social system that humanity is, because to be social, to be in a relationship, we have to dream. Okay, so the left and right brain hemispheres have very interesting properties. And the most tricky thing, and the thing that I think McGilchrist does in the most beautiful and unique way, is to explain that when you look at the brain, when you discuss the left and right brain hemisphere function, when you talk about neuropsychology, it's your left brain talking. Let's pause for a second. We are examining a system, and the thing that is examining this system is just one part of that system. And so, because your left brain has such a difficult time grasping the function of the right brain, the left brain does not notice that the left brain does not notice that the right brain exists. And I'm using left brain, right brain, but here is what I actually mean. I mean that we literally live in two worlds. One of them is the physical world that we know. We know it because we lived in a left brain dominated society, and we've learned to appreciate the physical, the rational structure of the world. But we live in a second world also, and that's the dream world. And the moment you say, oh no, it's just two ways of looking at the same world, it's only your left brain talking. If you perceive the world with your right brain, it's now my left brain talking, then you see that we live in two worlds simultaneously. One is the world of dream, the world of God, the world of spirituality, the world of magic, and the other one is the world of physics, the world of rationality, the world of planning, the world of money. And at the moment we say that one of those worlds is false, it's because we have prioritized only one cognitive ability that we have and deprioritize the other. But if we balance them, we will know that these two worlds are exist and they're both real. The reality of the world of magic is only doubted by the part of us that cannot perceive it. And it's currently the dominant part of us. What dominates society today, and this is now coming to philosophy of normalization. To normalize the return of spirituality, dreaming, magic, God, etc., you have to teach people to know when they are habitually shifting into the perception that is absolutely unable to perceive those parts of reality. Okay? This is what the age of return means. It means the rebalancing of the dreaming function that we as spirits, as humans possess, with the rationalization function that we know so well, right? So what does all of this mean, right? In what way does this kind of complement what I was talking about before? Well, me and Dina, we often talk about this, and to me, Margarita, please mute yourself.
Yeah.
Thank you. And to me, the sort of what's returning is our understanding that dreaming and magic has about the same degree of importance as rationality and and planning, right? We, Dina is very active in this. She's working her whole school. I think this is my view of it, and Dina, you can, kick me later. But her whole school is about teaching people to use that cognitive ability that they have as a practical discipline. And that means developing your intuition. It means developing your ability to perceive this dream reality, to use it to construct a full picture of the world and yourself, right? And that I think I'm getting tired, so I'm probably gonna stop pretty soon. But I think to me that's the major component here, is that the return of God is the return of this ability to use the intuitive, right? And that is where the return of meaning and the return of relationship also comes from. Because in my spiritual practice, right, I'm relating to stones and trees and hot springs, and I'm completely personifying them. And it's a laughable thing to somebody who's very rational. But, you know, I want to tell you a little story. Maybe that's a good story for closing, because I think we're probably all tired, since I am. And it's a story about how in around 2012 and 12 and 13, I started going to these ceremonies with my Native American mentor that took place in the you know, in a cave near Lake Tahoe, that is the power place and the spirit place of her tribe for many generations before. And and these ceremonies and these events, my rational mind would absolutely freak out. They were disorganized. They seemed strange. They seemed, you know, chaotic. There was very little planning. It was always breaking. It was always, you know, it was always very strange and very strenuous and very difficult. And nevertheless, something, and I'm very happy that happened. I kept going back again, year after year after year. And every year I would go there, and right in the middle of the whole thing, I'd be like, I don't know why I'm doing this. Why am I doing this to myself again? Like, I'm hungry, I'm sitting alone in this cave. It's hot. I don't know when my friends are gonna come in. Maybe they got hit by a car. I don't have a cell phone. Like, you know, I'm supposed to take care of this fire, and this fire, you know, doesn't want to burn. And I'm scared because maybe cops will come in and think I'm a homeless guy, right? All of these left brain thoughts coming to me, you know, time after time after time. And I was doing this for about 10 years. And then I ended up in the Azores. Some of you may know this story, and some may not. But what happened is I ended up in the Azores, and I already knew how to become friends with nature phenomena because of those ceremonies, because I was taught, and I had to really push myself to learn it. And I sat down in front of a hot spring, and Dina will remember that night because she was there doing sessions when I went to that hot spring, and I had a vision where the hot spring was talking to me and told me, you can come here, you can live here, and this is what you should do. And I bought that land in the Azores based on that vision. And it's now been a year and a half, not a very long period, but I already know how lucky I was, because that place is chaotic. And I know a number of people who bought land there and nothing works. And I also know that for me, you know, I met the right people, I got the right help, I got reliable people, which is very rare there. And something really good happened, because when I am there, I am in the reality that is half magical and half real. And I talk to that place, and I talk to the spirits that live there, and I feel things. And in feeling things, I'm not only lucky, because that you can, you know, chalk that off to many things, but because these things are my friends, I feel more happy, because I know that I have many powerful friends. I can't explain that feeling, but part of my way of life, and the sense of groundedness in this reality, and the sense of meaning, comes from the personification of, you know, stones and hot springs and rainbows and things like that. And that is how these things come in, and this is what they do to you. And I made that connection. You would not believe it. This summer, I was sitting in that cave on Lake Tahoe, and I was looking around, and I already knew the environment, and I was no longer, you know, really distracted by my left brain, because it's been 10 years. And I thought to myself, oh my God, this was a journey that took me places in a really strange, unpredictable, and yet beautiful and fulfilling way. And that may be a good place to stop and answer some questions.
Beautiful story, Alex. And you know, I want to mention that while you start talking, you were talking part of this lecture from your left brain, quite large, more or less logically. And when you start completely took side of your left brain, I did want to attack you from a right brain view. I'm not going to do it. I just want to mention it. And I will leave this to our friends. I see some people maybe can join in. I see Misha Yoshpa looking at us with interest. Maybe you can say something, or other people, hey, microphone is open.
Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Hello, hello.
Sasha, thanks very much for such an abundance of everything. It's not only information. And it warms my heart to hear that you commune with nature spirits. I just wanted to offer basically a couple brief thoughts about the topics that we've just been exposed to. One of them is my kind of inner feelings and inner perception of the artificial intelligence from a different standpoint. Since the natural presence, which people call God or Tao or whatever you want, or natural mind, that natural presence permeates the whole of creation and material world, then it doesn't stop with humans, of course. And of course, it goes into our silicon and germanium. And we expect those systems to behave like ourselves, kind of making them a little bit anthropomorphic in our own image. And I think that's a completely wrong perspective. It's good up to a certain point, but beyond certain point, I feel that, for example, silicon, which is one of the most abundant elements on Earth, possesses its own cognitive abilities that are so alien to human understanding that we can't even fathom how it works. Besides, since it's so abundant, that whole transposition of a quantum flow of silicon is a unified body because it comprises quite a large part of Earth crust. So I think with just an epiphenomenon of computers and microchips, silicon now is awakening as a whole, as a dynamic Earth machine that first produced humans, not first, but at a certain point of its evolution, produced humans that, strangely enough, produced again cognitive abilities in the silicon-based machines. But if we look at the continuum of that coming from the mineral world, it becomes obvious to see, to me at least, that this is what's happening. It's sort of like flora created humans just to evolve. If we look at flora from that standpoint, because millions and millions of people are basically, all their lives, all they're doing is producing floral forms like tomatoes, potatoes, corn, etc. Same thing happens with silicon. It also kind of enslaves us in its own way. And Sasha very well put this into perspective, saying that complexity is such that humans can't cope. So silicon will take care of us. And especially taken into the consideration that world of enlightenment, of course, is over. And look what it produced. With all our quote unquote intelligence that we are so sapiens about, it produced havoc, hunger, murder, weapons of mass destruction, ecocide, and everything else. I don't think humans are that intelligent en masse, generally. So I think Earth is coming to our aid in a strange way. It will produce its own silica-based civilization that maybe will help us, maybe will destroy us. We don't know what Earth plan is. but I hope we will at a certain point. Thank you.
You
I
know,
don't know, Misha. I would probably not use the words you used. But I see, like, because I really love working with element spirits, right? You know, the whole history of humanity is the history of fire, and electronics is the marriage between fire and silicon. So in a way, I am with you. I wouldn't use the words you used to describe this, but yes, we'd be extremely arrogant to believe that it's us kind of creating all of this.
you know what? When you, Misha, step in with your ideas, I kind of felt we having a group forum in between humans and flora and Earth, so our perspective widened a lot. I don't know if it's a topic of this lecture. I'm like confused because suddenly our view camera went up and look from a huge perspective. I'm just mentioning.
Oh, my father-in-law wrote a philosophical um, lecture book where he comes to the logical conclusion that any material thing has its own consciousness.
Oh.
And yeah, so everything. And the reasoning was by consciousness, he understood the like wave of survival. So consciousness bring things more probability to survive. And that's why the whole physical world was able to be created, because the more complicated system based on lower elements, like system of elements on one level to another, like from little like cells to big organisms, big bodies, to societies of like bodies, and groups of planets, and so on. So all these levels of development, of evolution, is just ruled by the consciousness of things. So just
Wow, we're going into a lot of
Yeah,
some serious deep philosophy here. I didn't
we are
intend
kind
this.
of turning into philosophical road, which I'm confused about this because my Monday talks usually like quite practical, and I don't know, maybe this I would ask you guys, maybe you write in my group and I'll ask this question: do you need more philosophy or more like down to earth thing? Because
but on practical side, there are a lot of like the state of science these days, a lot of sciences actually, it's biology, it's cosmology, it's even physics. They face they are very historically very materialistic, but in some way they come to some effects like neuroscience, which cannot be just explained by material things. But they completely like ignore like mainstream of the science, completely ignore this spiritual part, and try to not to go there and stay on this materialistic path. So, and I think that's kind of like bad thing which happens with science at the moment. It's very conservative. It cannot accept the spiritual part. So that's to Alex's remarks about what's going to happen with science and world in the future. So I think it's going to affect to science as well.
I think practically, I think there's probably about another 15 minutes which I couldn't get to because I was starting to get slow and lost in my thoughts. But in terms of like the practice of it, there's probably a few things to talk about. And to me, you know, when we talk about normalizing spirituality, there are practical things, and there are practical things in
could be.
I think, to me, just allowing that you can't understand things at the explanation level is actually like one of the most important practical things. It's like you come to a place where like how do how do you curate teachers, for example, for your school, right? You somebody who works in a modality you don't know, how do you evaluate them as a teacher, as a magician, as a person? You have to allow yourself to not have a verbal explanation for something. Like when I was, going to those ceremonies, and I had an absolute aversion reaction to them from the explanatory sort of everyday mind point of view, but I still did them. I think just allowing for the possibility of the unknown parts of the world to exist that simply do not uh, simply do not allow for an explanation, that do not allow for a verbal description, that only allow for metaphor and only allow for intuitive comprehension. That's a huge step towards practically allowing that to happen, because then the rest of the steps are now allowed, right? But when when you're talking to somebody who is like super mainstream, Yulik will probably remember hundreds of doctors who would have none of what we're talking about. And I was, by the way, going to talk about medicine a little bit, but I can't right now. It's too much. There is, to be able to face that and to be able to say, well, like, no, that's not the whole picture, is really important.
That's a very interesting way you put. Do you need to put limit on a dreaming? How you put limit on a dreaming? And is it how you navigate those realms? As example, I don't know, sometimes people come to me and say, I'm talking to serious people and they give me teaching. And I'm like, I don't know. But then I come to Bulkyn and say, hey, I gave a name to this geyser in Azores, and geysers start to answer me, give me ideas. And like some people look at
It's
me.
the same thing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but how you differentiate, how you navigate, which dreamings is good and which not, and you can't measure it, or you can. I have some ideas, but maybe we talk about it more. We have a talk with Michael Yoshpa about dreaming and illusions and reality. You remember Michael, right? Yeah, so
Yes.
maybe we'll touch this topic.
Yes.
It's a good one.
Carola, you have a question. Go.
No, actually it's not so much a question, but I just remember like coming from Hungary, a post-Soviet country where spirituality was completely banned for some years, and also connection with religion. Like many of the spiritual people actually channeled their spirituality into art, into literature, into paintings. And I do believe that we have more than our five senses. And I also believe that somehow we have a sense for spirituality. Like we kind of like, there are these points of like, it can be either a cathartic moment or, this feeling of brief enlightenment, whatever, when we are just in connection with creation itself. So yeah, so I think we have a sense for spirituality in that sense, and also these times of oppression let spirituality spread, out into arts. So I think that adds to the normalization of spirituality. Yeah, I just wanted to add this. Yeah.
Thank you, Carola. I personally love this idea you gave, and I will be contemplating on it.
Well, you already do that because you do art classes
Oh,
as well, right?
this is kind of a new world, a sense for spirituality. I think it's a step of which could be thing like contemplate. Okay, we are like closer to our end time. I would love to hear from other people. Questions, ideas, criticizing, suggestion for next talk. Ululu. No?
Could I
Hey.
share my? Hi, everybody. So I really enjoy listening to today's talks, and my understanding. Can I share my understanding?
Yes.
So we basically looking at the same thing, and kind of trying to make the meaning of life from different perspective. I think that's what the left brain and the right brain functions are. I also relate to neuroscience through my profession as a speech and language pathologist. So I'm just thinking that we basically talking like the sciences and all the spirituality schools. We are just looking to some degree. I don't know how to explain that. So basically the same thing, if you just imagine that, let's say it's some kind of fruit. I'm looking at a fruit and you're looking at that fruit. So I'm seeing its shape and then you're seeing its color and somebody seeing something else, like smelling it. And I think that's what it is. Like we're all trying to make sense of life through what's predominant in our life. And for majority of people, left brain functioning is more predominant because it allows us to survive, right? Logic.
Because we were educated like that, that's why.
Because
Well,
we
Dina,
educated.
I mean, let's not dismiss it, right? Because it does allow us to survive. You have to plan where you get food tomorrow, right? You have to plan when to, plant your wheat so that you can harvest it in time, etc., etc. All of that is left brain. So it's actually super useful, but it's just not the only thing. The key to spiritual development is not to get your right brain huge and left brain tiny. It's to get them into balance where they can actually work together in the most positive way.
I agree, and I see using plant medicine allows to combine, maybe not combine. Well, I don't notice actually as much my left brain functioning, at least for the majority part of traveling, journeying. It's mostly right hemisphere is more activated, I think. But I think plant medicine allows us to open those synapses in our brain and maybe kind of take off the borders between the right one and the left part of the brain.
I agree with you. I think it does activate the right brain because if I'm, all of these interpretations are very subjective, but to me, a psychedelic experience is always a metaphorical experience. And metaphorical experiences are, from that realm of magic and non-linear dreaming.
What I noticed, because I got a lot of new people right now, people who don't have developed left brain and metaphors, they don't have even tool to explain the experience. They kind of,
I see, yes.
Yeah, I had something, I had this, but there are no even tool to talk about it. Yulik, you wanted to say something?
Да, я хотел просто сказать, что, just don't forget
We
what
speak
happened.
English this time.
What happened in 40s and 50s when people start to get commissurotomy, lobotomy, separating left and right brain, and how was disastrous it's for thousands of patients, and even the guy gets Nobel Prize. We know now what's happened with people who separated artificially right and left brain, who become totally apathic and unmotivated, just no cognitive or any kind of volitional activity. So it's not about left or right brain. We don't have any choice. It's need to be communicating in order to survive.
Yeah.
Yeah, my point. Thank you, Sasha. It was brilliant talk.
I can talk, Dina.
I think
just
we're
finish?
finishing this moment,
May-
and I'm closing microphones.
Dina.
Yeah.
So you just mentioned, sorry for interruption. You just mentioned to suggest topic for future discussions. So I'm really eager to suggest one topic, which will be a continuation of today's topic in a way, is navigating during altered states of consciousness, basically dreaming.
You wrote me this topic, and I loved how formulated. Can you write it to me again? I've lost. I will put it as the topic.
Yeah, sure.
I think it's interesting. Okay, guys, I think enough is enough for today. This is just a beginning of discussion, not the end. And we have a group where you can write your questions, your ideas, and we'll bring them to the next conversation. Next Monday, we have Luba Evans with a lecture about absolutely different topic, lecture about narcissism, which is interesting lecture for me, actually. You know, welcome to come. And after this, I think we have a talk with Michael Yoshpa, who was here, again, about dreaming, illusion, and reality. And maybe we'll pick up some ideas which were here to continue our conversations. So
thank you, Dina. I loved it. And Dina can, if you want to write to me or have any questions, Dina.
Yeah, please. If you had some ideas and you couldn't deliver it today, you're welcome to write. And we'll read and see, and to be continued, actually.
Dina, 1 minute I can talk?
I think like a couple of questions. We're not continuing, so a couple of sentences only.
For me, I only three sentences. I work for this a lot, and I think the 2 right, left side, it's not enough for me. And I create one another head. Now I have 3 heads. And it's today I create a new body. This is a progress how, because left, right is not enough. You have to create a new space somewhere.
New space. So we had a new name, like spiritual, during this conversation. Thank you, Tamara. I think I like this idea. We have a new name, like some new sense, spiritual sense, and new space in the head where they all connected. I don't know how metaphorical or realistic it is, but it could be. Let's explore this. I have no idea.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Okay. Good night.
Thank
Let's continue.
you, guys.
I just want to mention, tomorrow we have Astrology Cafe. It's one way of dreaming, but another way of dreaming, Dasha will lead in Kundalini Shake on a Wednesday, and you're welcome to join. I think I'll try to join. I love it. I already experienced it with her on a seminar, and it was good. So come.
Thank you.